We're with Congressman from Iowa Steve King live here on Radio Row at the Fair Conference on Capitol Hill. Congressman, a couple things I want to start with, but outrageous. We just find out today that regardless of the stay on President Obama's illegal amnesty from Judge Haynes, thank goodness for him, in Texas. Now we're finding out, was in the Washington Free Beacon earlier today, that 555,000 illegal immigrants now were issued and processed Social Security numbers in defiance of a court order. What is going on out there?
You know, John, that memo I have not seen this morning yet, but I don't know how to react to this president any longer. He has taken. I have a picture somewhere, and I will just visualize. We're doing radio, so but he's taken Article 1 of the Constitution and the Congress that says the Congress shall make all laws, and torn that out, and with a smirk on his face, folded it once, stuck it in his shirt pocket, and said, "I'm also the United States Congress. I will make up the laws, and if I don't like the laws we have, I'll just ignore them. And if we need a law and we don't have one, I'll make it up. I'll speak it into law. I'll step up to the podium and tell them how it's going to be." I mean, he has threatened ICE and our other immigration officers, if you follow the law against my directive, you will be punished. There will be consequences. And so this idea that the president would go forward with an act like that, it's a breathtaking thing, but I don't know that the American people understand this well enough to rise up. I thought last November 20th, when the president announced his executive amnesty that he had promised for so long, one of the few promises he's kept, by the way, but he did keep this one, and it completely unconstitutional. And I expected that we would have people that were animated on that across the country. I was animated. I was ready to go to the White House and stand at the gates and call people in press there and just say, let's surround the White House and demand that the president get right with the Constitution and his oath of office, and, by the way, his own analysis of what the Constitution says. It wasn't there. It just didn't light the American people up. So I went down to the border instead, and we traveled the border and sent the news media back that we could. We're at a very dangerous time. Our republic is at risk. Our Constitution has been torn asunder by the President of the United States. He seems to be, he'll do whatever he wants to do, and the Congress has been demonstrated to not have the will collectively to shut this president down.
Why?
They don't have the guts. Just bluntly, the guts to look the president in the eye and say, Mr. President, you took an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, so help you God. And in that oath, it's required that you take care that the laws be faithfully executed. You know that that's your job. We all know you're violating it. Every member of Congress takes an oath to support and defend the Constitution. When the president violates his oath, it's ever more incumbent upon us to keep ours. And that means use all constitutional tools we can to restrain this president. And we didn't have the votes because we didn't have the will. And one of the reasons we didn't have the will because the American people didn't supply enough of it to brace up some of those people in the margins.
Congressman, what is your Republican caucus leadership really afraid of here?
Well, they're afraid of confrontation. There's been an avoiding of confrontation for a long time, and the way we've been through this over and over again. But I just go back to the Obamacare situation. When Obamacare was passed, I drafted the first repeal of Obamacare, and I started bringing a discharge petition. Nancy Pelosi was Speaker of the House then. She was going to block everything, of course. When Republicans won the majority in November of 2010, 87 freshman Republicans came in. Every one of them ran on the ticket of repealing the full 100% repeal of Obamacare. They supported my bill, and I said, we need to cut off all funding to implement or enforce Obamacare and end this now, because now we have a majority in the Congress that can do that. Well, I got outmaneuvered at the Rules Committee. They denied me the ability to bring the amendment that would cut off the funding in a way that it would stick. Instead, they allowed it in a way that it would allow Harry Reid to peel it off over in the Senate. And that was the first sign that they weren't willing to have a confrontation with the president. The same pattern is what followed through on this immigration component with the appropriations last fall, and then again later this year when 167 Republicans voted against the Speaker, another 9 weren't around to vote, only 75 Republicans voted with the Speaker to fund the Department of Homeland Security, which funds the President's unconstitutional lawlessness.
Now, during that vote, there were a number of congressmen who said, remember the shutdown battle, November, December, they were saying, well, the real fight is going to be funding Homeland Security after we get our reinforcements in. And then Congressman Steve King from Iowa, they caved on that. So that upset a lot of people because it really seemed like a bait and switch.
It was a bait and switch, and I played call shot on that all the way through. I said what would happen. I wrote down what would happen. What I said would happen happened. I called it, and I sent this out in a tweet. Sent out the picture, the fish trap theory. And here's how this worked. Their strategy was the fish trap, and a fish trap will have a funnel. It would be like a cage, and then the funnel that brings you into a smaller, it shrinks it down to a circle about half the size of the overall trap, and the fish will swim along. Their nose causes them to follow those trails. They'll swim in there, and then it's easier to swim into the next funnel than it is out of the one you've just swum in. Once you go through 3 of those funnels, and if you're a fish, you're in the end and you're trapped and there is no way out. That's the incremental way that they push us to that. They say, well, the big thing that we needed was all of the funding for leverage. They narrowed it down to the DHS funding. That's one of the funnels. Now, you never can go back and get all of the funding for leverage again. You can't take that huge hostage that really matters to the president and hold him accountable for that by not funding until he cracks. And so once you swim into the next level of this, and it became just DHS, and then they separated it out so that it was a separate vote on DHS later on in the year. That's another funnel, and so each funnel takes you into the cage of the fish trap, and members don't see that coming sometimes, just like fish don't see it coming. And so I pointed that picture out maybe a little bit. I can pull that up and you can see what that means. But I just think that was the best way to describe the strategy that it was. And I said I could see it coming. I said what they were doing. I warned them that the President of the United States doesn't care about shutting off the funding to Department of Homeland Security. He's only using it for a welcome mat for illegal aliens anyway. And so what are we going to do? Take a hostage that says we're not going to fund the Department of Homeland Security? And the result of that is that the permits that he's manufacturing lawlessly out of thin air are being issued by U.S. Citizenship Immigration Services, USCIS. They are fee-for-services. Even during the government shutdown of a year and a half ago, they got paid on time because they were fee-for-service. But the people that are supposed to be guarding our border, and we have that shut down just of DHS, they would not be paid on time. They would be paid later. They'd get their back pay. They'd be paid later. So we'd be asking Border Patrol, go down there on the border, risk your life for us. We'll pay you when we get to an agreement with the President. The President could wait until hell freezes over or the cows come home. It wouldn't matter to him. He doesn't care about securing the border. He doesn't care about the morale of our Department of Homeland Security, and he directs them not to enforce the law. So those are the things that have taken place here with this president, the damage that he has done. And we're focused on the immigration issue here, but you could go back through Obamacare, you could go with recess appointments, and the list goes on and on of the times that the president has decided that he is an imperial emperor, not just simply a president of the United States. When he gets the quiz of name the 3 branches of government, another smirk forms on his face, and he says, well, those 3 branches are me, myself, and I.
That's basically the way he's governing, no question. Congressman, got about 7 minutes remaining. What is the objective of President Obama with this illegal amnesty and everything else he's doing? There's many of us believe that at the end of the day, he's trying to change the face of America. Obviously, with driver's licenses, Social Security numbers, they're going to be able to vote. Whether they're legal or not, they just have to check the box. And 90% of them are going to vote for Democratic candidates because there's the promise of additional entitlements. So you're basically buying these votes. Is that part of the plan?
It is, and just to put it simply, the president is importing millions of illegal aliens who, when they arrive here, he thinks, and he's right, they are undocumented Democrats. And so the next phase of this is to document these Democrats so they can vote. This is a raw political power move. I mean, think of the time that Franklin Delano Roosevelt tried to stack the Supreme Court.
Right.
Well, that was grossly offensive to the American people that he would try to do that to try to get the result he wanted out of the Supreme Court. Well, this is the President of the United States trying to stack the electorate in America with millions of people and lawlessly bringing them into the United States of America and giving them a presence here and thinking and realizing that the longer you can keep them here, the less likely it is that they will go home. And they will see Barack Obama and his party as a beneficiary, that they are the beneficiaries of his lawlessness. They don't understand the law. They come from lawless countries. So they're not at all likely to defend our Constitution or the rule of law. They take an oath to it when they're naturalized. And I speak at those services as often as I can. But it erodes the politics of this country, the respect for the rule of law, and it creates this massive electorate that will likely vote in large numbers for Barack Obama and his party, just like African Americans have done so after Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act, which, by the way, took the majority of Republicans in the House and Senate to make sure that passed.
Well, now, but Congressman, along with that, the other issue that you've got going on is that once they get these illegals get Social Security numbers, that they're going to be eligible for every entitlement there is: Obamacare, earned income tax credit, Social Security, even though they haven't paid any money in. I mean, isn't this overtime just going to bankrupt our system? We're already at a national debt of $18 trillion. How long can it go on?
Well, that's what we don't know, and I'm a little surprised that the U.S. dollar is as strong as it is. And I don't think it's because our dollar itself is getting stronger. I think it's just in relation to the other currency that's getting weaker. So there was no formula. I don't know that anybody predicted we'd see the stronger dollar that we have. But when we have an imbalance in trade, a trade deficit, when we've got $18 trillion in national debt that is going through the roof beyond there, and I don't know where that actually ends. Even Republicans pass a budget, which the best that we could hope for out of that is that we balance it in 10 years. We know how that works. I've been fighting on this thing for 13 years. When I came in here, in my first weeks, I went to the budget chairman and said, "Where's our balanced budget?" And he said, "It's impossible to balance the budget." And I set about drafting a balanced budget, but to do that with fresh green staff and a 2.7 or $3 trillion to work with, that's a pretty difficult task. And it took me 5 years to get to the point where we could even get a balanced budget on the floor for debate. We lost that effort, and then that was a budget that balanced in 10 years. Next year we took it to 9, 8, 7. We went to 4.5 years by last year, and this one now balances in about 10. So that's what we're trying to do. But how long will our currency hold together? And, is this, the full faith and credit of the U.S. government seems to be worth more than in relation to the EU and the Canadians in proportion today.
Right.
But that's all that it is. It used to be gold, then it was silver, now we're down to full faith and credit. Have we created this? And, by the way, currency can be injected into circulation by the click of a mouse. It's not go out there and weigh up the gold in Fort Knox and print some gold certificates. It's the click of the mouse, and full faith and credit is just what people are willing to let it be worth. So have we created a giant electronic global chain letter that's not based on anything that you can trace it back through? Just like our toxic mortgages, you could have a whole stack of those mortgages. Did you actually have any collateral that you could foreclose on? No one seems to know, and they're scared to find out. So they'll keep blowing air in this balloon for fear that that it's not going to float.
Congressman King, we got about a minute and a half remaining. The Trans-Pacific Partnership Fast Track Trade Promotion Authority befuddling to me why Republicans in Congress would give President Obama any additional authority beyond what he has now. Is this going to pass the House?
I don't know. Right now, it's probably not to the point where it's hanging in the balance. I think it's on the negative side right now. They have not put the votes together to get this done. And from my perspective, I've long been a free trader. I've worked for each one of these bilateral free trade agreements that we've had over the years. I've gone to some of their countries, I guess most of those countries, and dealt with them there and encouraged them to come to the table with certain things that we needed to get done. And I have in the past supported Trade Promotion Authority for the president because I understand the difficulty of trying to negotiate that and then throw it in front of Congress.
Right.
But this president's not trustworthy. And why would we give him authority to negotiate a trade agreement when he won't keep his own oath to support the Constitution of the United States? And that is a big deal. But, you know, are we that urgent that we need to get this done in the next year and a half? Or maybe we can lay the foundation and the next president can do these negotiations. That seems to be the theme that's coming out of the conservative core of the House of Representatives today. And that's where I've been moving to for the last few months. And it's not my nature. But the president, you know, I ask when they come to me and they say, well, where are you going to be on this? I just say, tell me, does the president believe that Congress has any authority to negotiate any kind of agreements? And if he doesn't believe we have any authority, why do we have to give him any? And so tie it in with the Iranian negotiations. He's ready to sacrifice the security and perhaps the survivability of Israel so that he can say his mark in history is that he got ink on an agreement that essentially guarantees Iran's nuclear capability within 2 to 3 years. So it's a difficult time. Let's find the right president.
Well, that is going to sum it up. That's going to be the final word. Republican Congressman from Iowa, 4th District, Steve King with us on Capitol Hill. Congressman, it's an honor to have you on. Keep up the good work. Thank you so much.
Privileged to be here. Thank you, John.